Have you ever wondered which countries in the world it would be best to avoid? Have you ever wondered if you have been to a country where you could have gotten robbed, assaulted, raped, or even killed? Welcome to Who's Number 1. In this video, we are going to take a look at the 10 countries in the world where you are most likely to be the victim of a crime, going through the most up-to-date data on countries' crime rates. But before starting, can you guess the country that takes the number 1 spot? Let us know in the comments section below. Now, with that said, let's get to it. Number 10, Jamaica. In 2022, the Jamaican Prime Minister declared a state of emergency because of the country's rising crime rates. This followed a travel warning from the U.S. State Department suggesting travelers to not go to certain areas of the country, as Jamaica has had one of the highest murder rates in the world for many years, with the country's former Prime Minister describing the situation as a national challenge of unprecedented proportions. Organized criminal gangs are one of the driving forces behind the 67.42 crime rate in Jamaica, and violent crimes are common. Sexual assaults occur frequently, even at all-inclusive resorts, and local police often do not respond effectively to serious criminal incidents. Number 9, Brazil. Brazil presents exceptionally high rates of violent crimes for a country so big. It has the highest number of intentional homicides in the world, with 62,318, which is an average of 170 murders per day. Brazil's most massive problem is organized crime, which has expanded in recent years, and which has made violence between rival groups a common occurrence. Drug trafficking, corruption, and domestic violence are all pervasive issues in the country, with carjacking, pickpocketing, and bag snatching being the most common crimes, particularly in major cities. Both local citizens and visitors are often targeted by criminals, especially during public festivals such as the Carnival, as thieves operate in outdoor markets, in hotels, and on public transport. On top of that, Brazil's borders are prime areas for trafficking of all sorts, with the crime rate around them being especially high, and it doesn't help that the country's major cities have favelas, or shantytowns, where poor people live. These informal settlements have high rates of violent crime and low levels of police intervention. All of these make the country's crime rate as high as 67.49. Number 8, El Salvador. Drug cartels, warring street gangs and corrupt security forces have turned El Salvador into one of the world's most dangerous places outside an official war zone. Its two largest gangs, MS-13 and Barrio 18, both some of the most dangerous in the world, contribute to most social violence. There are an estimated 25,000 gang members at large in El Salvador, with more than 50,000 in prison, and about 60,000 young people in youth gangs, which dominate the country. Many gangs have also cultivated relationships, and in some cases territorial disputes, with drug traffickers. In addition to gangs, high unemployment rates and low wages in the country have pushed families into marginalized areas where crimes are common, ramping up El Salvador's crime rate to 67.79. Number 7, Guyana. Guyana is an undiscovered gem of a country in South America. It is the only English-speaking nation on the continent. It has dense rainforests, savanna, and sandy beaches, and boasts one of the highest levels of biodiversity in the world. And unlike many of its neighbors, over 70% of its natural environment remains intact. Guyana is basically a paradise, a natural wonderland. However, its crime levels are absurdly high. With a crime rate of 68.74, armed robberies are a regular occurrence, especially in shopping areas and business districts in Georgetown, the country's capital. In Guyana, police officers and magistrates are continuously bribed to make cases go away, and if that wasn't enough, the government does not prosecute cases in which the alleged victim or the victim's family agreed to drop the case in exchange for a monetary payment out of court. Number 6, Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago was once the richest state in the Caribbean, but it has been dragged down over the past 2 decades by mismanagement of oil wealth, corruption, the drug trade, and an explosion in gun crime and violence. For women, it is a national crisis, with photos of missing women appearing on social media with regularity. Violence is a national emergency, and headlines of shootings happening throughout the country are weekly. The figures of child sexual abuse and incest are also very high. There is a great demand for illegal weapons in Trinidad, which fuel drug trafficking and gang-related activities, and visitors of the country are typically victims of pickpocketing, assault, theft, and fraud. Also, Trinidad's proximity to Venezuela and Guyana makes it a convenient location for the smuggling of cocaine to the west. Number 5, Honduras. Weak institutions and widespread corruption leading to impunity are empowering criminal organizations in Honduras. From drug traffickers to street gangs, Honduras has become Central America's most violent country, and also the least politically stable. Corruption, extortion, coercion, and drug smuggling run rampant throughout Honduran society, preventing the nation from building trustworthy authorities and severely limiting progress. The situation has prompted international organizations and governments to offer assistance in combating crime in the country. With a crime rate of 74.54, Honduras struggles with specifically targeted attacks against youths, women, and public figures, including politicians and judiciary workers. The United Nations has declared that violence against women is a pandemic in Honduras, which has the highest femicide rate in Latin America. Number 4. Afghanistan. Afghanistan is not just one of the most dangerous countries in the world because it is at war, but also because it is plagued by crime. Afghanistan supplied 85% of the world's illicit opium in 2020, and despite the Taliban, which regained control of the country in 2021, having pledged to stamp out the opium industry, opium is such a vital part of the country's struggling economy that it is going to be almost impossible to eliminate. 90% of the heroin consumed in Europe comes from opium produced in Afghanistan, and 93% of the opiates on the world market originated in Afghanistan. Throughout the country, regional militia commanders, criminal organizations, and corrupt government officials have engaged in drug trafficking as a source of revenue, and some anti-government groups make a profit from it. Widespread unemployment and rudimentary basic services add additional fuel for many of the country's crimes, ramping up the crime index to 76.31, and many riots have occurred throughout the country in response to various political and other issues. Number 3. South Africa. South Africa is the most dangerous country in Africa, with 5 of its cities having the highest crime rates on the continent. The country as a whole has a crime rate of 76.86, and these extreme crime levels have been attributed to poverty and wealth disparity, but also to factors like social stress from uncaring environments in early childhood, and subsequent lack of guardianship. Violence is seen by many as a necessary and justified way of resolving conflict in South Africa, and some men believe that coercive sexual behavior towards women is legitimate. A subculture of violence and criminality, ranging from individual criminals who rape or rob, to informal groups and more formalized gangs, has surged in the country. And on top of that, South Africa's economic and social challenges are mounting, risking stagnation amid an unprecedented energy crisis, increasingly binding infrastructure and logistics bottlenecks. Number 2. Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea's 80.79 crime rate is fueled by the availability of small arms, pervasive lawlessness, and endemic corruption. The lack of effective state institutions has resulted in the proliferation of armed gangs and bandits, with socio-economic or tribally motivated violence between groups being a regular occurrence in the highlands, and sometimes spilling into more urban areas such as Port Moresby, where unrest is common, especially during elections. The country's gangs engage in small and large-scale criminal activity, consisting mainly of members with little education and few employment opportunities, and organized crime in the form of corruption is common in major cities. Additionally, the geographical location of Papua New Guinea makes it appealing for drug and human trafficking. With all the aforementioned and with a crime rate so high, it would be logical to think that Papua New Guinea is the most crime-infested country in the world, but there is one country that is almost fully controlled by criminals, and that is Number 1. Venezuela. Venezuela is not just risky by the standards of Latin America, but it is up there with the most dangerous countries in the world despite not being at war. Venezuela has one of the highest rates of corruption, violent crime, and unrest, and the overall highest crime index in the world, 83.76. The U.S. Department of State has issued a Level 4 travel advisory for Venezuela, indicating that it is unsafe to travel to the country. Venezuela's high crime rates have been attributed to reasons including government corruption, a flawed judicial system, and the breakdown of the rule of law. The capital city of Caracas, which is one of the deadliest cities in the world, is a focal point for violent demonstrations, organized crime, robbery, kidnapping, and homicide. Most kidnappings are express, and last less than 48 hours, frequently targeting people leaving hotels, traveling in taxis, or walking in wealthier areas, and tourists are often targeted for robbery or theft. Western travelers, especially Americans, also face the threat of arbitrary detention. As you can see, you should probably avoid these countries if you don't want to become part of a statistic. Now, how is it possible that the country home to many of the deadliest cities on the globe doesn't even make this list? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you have enjoyed the video, let us know by clicking the like button, and subscribe so you don't miss any of our weekly top 10 content. Thank you for watching. This is Who's Number 1. See you next time.